we do have a pilot program there as well, and then our flagship work is here in Zambia. And I'm one of the co-founders and the executive director of the African Education Program. And our mission is to unlock the potential of African children, youth, and women by building and growing community-led organizations and initiatives that focus on quality and inclusive education, health, and community development.
I was very impressed in looking at your website, which we will include here. But I was very impressed about your inclusion of boys, because I do think that that's really critical. And you shift over to adult women, and the boys do what at that point?
Exactly. That's why, there are fantastic initiatives out there that are only for girls. We understand those benefits, but we saw very early on that excluding boys was not a part of our solution, right? Because if you only empower girls, if you only focus on the girls, at the end of the day, they're still going to get married, right? They're still going to be in homes and households with their male counterparts. So we really found that giving girls their own space for certain discussions is very important. Giving the boys their own space, their own, healthy male role models is really important. But really, then the most important is creating these spaces for them to come together, have dialogue, excuse me, and be empowered equally, right? So that at the end of the day, they have equal partnership in their households, in their communities, and in the nation and the region, right?
Right. When I looked at the fact that you got started in 2006 and you're a little high school student, I just am so impressed with your outcomes. And I was looking at some of the outcomes where I wrote them down, like 98% of the women in your program, as indicated on your website, are not pregnant before the age of 18. I mean, this nearly brings me to tears. And because you're also devoted to entrepreneurial education, so you're giving people an opportunity to earn more income. And you had a 264% increase in income. And this just makes everything so much more livable and viable for everybody that you're working with. So, the last one I just want to bring up is your 90% grade 12 graduation for the people in your program. And I think you're really doing amazing work. But I was just blown away that you little kids in high school started. And I mean, I know high school practically is young adults. I mean, you're 17, 18 years old, you're young adults. But I really want to give our listeners, because a lot of what we focus on in my LinkedIn conversations with leaders is mentoring leaders who mentor leaders. Of you, with your little group there in Radnor High School in Pennsylvania, how did you guys come up with this idea? Tell me about the origins, because the origins give crispiness to the possibility that I too could do it. So I'd love to hear your story.
Well, yes, I mean, it's a over 20-year journey, right? That we have been on. And how it all started, I grew up in a very privileged suburb of Philadelphia, in a very, very good public school system. And we grew up fundraising, even in elementary school, pennies for UNICEF, by middle school, jump rope for heart, high school, relay for life, right? These big fundraisers.
Interesting.
And
Yeah,
as
getting kids
kids,
started early.
getting early, and granted, every penny, every dollar helps, right? But when you're a high schooler or a middle schooler, we were just a few friends and I had been thinking about how do we do a service project with a personal connection where we really know, where our hard work, where the money we raise is going to go. So that kind of been in the back of our minds. We'd also noticed a lot of waste in our school and communities, books and computers just kind of going in the trash. That had kind of been on our, and my still one of my best friends to this day, my co-founder Hillary, in 10th grade, came to lunch one day after watching a video about apartheid, and she was really riled up, and she was like, "Why don't we help kids in Africa?" And we're in 10th grade, so right, for us, Africa is one place at this point. And so I had a Zambian soccer coach for a few years. So we went to my coach. We said, "Hey, we want to help kids from where you're from. We have a few ideas, but like, what do we do? And he said, well, why don't you call my brother Amos? He's a community leader in this place called Kafue, and you figure it out. This was before WhatsApp, before Zoom. You had to get calling cards at gas stations to get like international minutes, right? And we call Amos, and that's how we come up with this project to ship a container of books and computers, from Philadelphia to Zambia. And honestly, like that was the end of the story. That was, our vision was just to ship that container. We became a 501(c)(3) nonprofit because we thought people would give us more money. We weren't even 18, so our parents got the paperwork in the mail saying they have a nonprofit, and that's when they realized we were pretty serious about this project.
And doing that
And
is a
yeah,
big, getting that 501(c)(3) is no small matter. Did you pull together to do that, or how did you do that?
we did. We had a friend's dad was a CPA, and he must have thought we were nuts when we were like, "Hi, Mr. Lincoln, can you help us start a nonprofit?" He's like, "Well, that's not exactly what I do," but
But
that's
even
the
so,
power
that
though of
costs
also
money. So
adults.
the parents were behind you in doing this because there's a filing fee for even doing that. They must have been really promoting your philanthropy and really proud of you guys.
Very much, very,
Yeah.
very much. And so,
So you got
but
501(c)(3), and then what happened?
by senior prom, we shipped our container. And even then, that was kind of the end of the story, right? We were very happy. We knew we would receive photos at some point of the goods. And we found out like a little bit before graduation that we were receiving a grant to go and travel and meet the community. And so we elected my mom because she had education, by trade,
Oh, that's great.
a teacher, in education by trade. So we go on this trip, and that's what changes everything. I turned 18. We were meeting our peers, we were meeting community leaders, and they're the ones who said, why don't you open a youth center? So all these books, computers can go in one place instead of getting distributed to the various schools where they would be locked up because they were actually too valuable for the
Mm-hmm.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
So then the following year, my mom and I traveled back again and met with community leaders, youth leaders, and we opened this youth center that has been, evolving organically for since 2006. And I mean, what's crazy to think about is we started with 25 youth. I remember a third of the young women were pregnant within the first like 3 months of working with them. And so today, to have statistics like the one you shared that almost none of our young women get pregnant before 18. This year alone, we're reaching over 5,000 children, youth, and women through our various programs. It's just, we never knew we would grow like this.
That sense, it's 30 years, it's 20 years of doing the work, following up, getting the donations, working with the kids, figuring out what the youth need, working with the people both there in Africa and also in your home, and lining everything up. And it's really just step by step by step, and then it has an amazing impact. What would you say about that? I mean, is that how you look at it now, or how do you see it?
You know, um, like many leaders that I'm sure you work with, I don't take enough time to take that step back and like celebrate the accomplishments. Like, sure, we had our 20-year anniversary last year. And for example, I hiked Kilimanjaro in celebration of 20 years. I hiked nearly 20,000 feet and raised $20,000. But even that, it was like I wasn't actually taking a step back to reflect. I was climbing a mountain, So it's like,
Also, it's like the burden of going forward and carrying on with all this stuff. You're right in the present for the 25 million problems you still have that haven't been accomplished. You're at a turning point though. 20
exactly.
years is definitely a turning point. So what would you say is the turning point for you guys, where you've come and where you're going now?
I think the real turning point for us now is we figured out who we are, right? We have figured out what we're good at. We have this incredible, multifaceted, model that is resource intense, right? We're with our kids now as early as the age of 5. all the way through college and university and then beyond as alumni, right? So we're with them for such a long time. So we do have this model, very resource intense, but works, right? We know it works. And
Mhm.
so what we also now know is we can take pieces of the model and do them elsewhere, again, keeping quality in mind, impact in mind. We're now in a position where, like this pilot in Rwanda, sort of stewarding a founder and a visionary's goals for a project, and how can we help operationally, administratively to accomplish those goals. So I think as an organization, we're very clear on, what we want to do, what we're good at, how we do it. I think the turning point to your comment is how do we become financially sustainable, right? Because you can have all the goodwill, you can have all the good heart,
Right.
but if the, the resources aren't there, you're a dead fish in water. Sorry for the like
No, no,
that
it's true. And
example,
it
right?
feels always like, fighting at your heels every second of the way. The
Yeah.
philanthropic path is burdened in that way, typically under resourced, and it's always kind of a collective begging to give people the vision and the impact. You certainly are coming up with some great results here that are going to make your story easier. But I did see that you're engaging also on a capital campaign, and that is pretty incredible. That's a great way of establishing input from your donors and people that are really behind your project. Do you want to speak a little bit about what the plan is for there? Who even drew up the plans for you? You see, even getting an illustrated building is somebody's commitment. I mean, it may be a what do they call it? In kind commitment. It doesn't have money to it, but it does build your bottom line in terms of your assets, because you've had somebody that's given you there a $50,000 rendering of an architectural design that you are using. How did you get that?
Yeah, so that's a great story, and we're very, very excited about this capital campaign. It's been a vision for a while now. Actually, 10 years ago, the local government where we operate in Zambia gave us the land that we're building on as a show of support and faith, in our work. So this has been a dream for a while to get into our permanent home, a space that was custom designed for us with the learning spaces that we need to really like take our impact to the next level. So, very fortunately, we did have a group of volunteer architects to do an initial concept, one being my co-founder, Sarah. She's an architect today, helped spearhead that forward. And then we did engage a Zambian firm, a Zambian-owned firm here in Lusaka to do our final, concept and drawings because it was very important that we have, sort of Zambian teams working with us for this project so
I
that it's
just
truly
stop you right there
localized.
before you go on, because
Yeah.
that is one of the hallmarks of your program that I can see. That you are not only resource intense in sense of taking people from 5 years old to college, but you're also locally based.